And welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Winning Edge Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick, and I'm joined by both Aiden and Ben today.
My first time. G'day, Pat. How are you?
Yeah. And we actually got cameras on today, so hello to everyone that can see our faces. We actually got a very special guest today. He has over 400 NBL games experienced. He was a part of the 1993 and 1997 NBL championship team with the Tigers and has his number 6 jersey hanging in the rafters of John Cain Arena. The man I'm speaking of is none other than Warrick Giddey. Wazza, how are you?
Hey, great, thanks, Pat, and thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
No, all good. Thanks for coming on. So we'll get started with the questions. So you grew up in New South Wales. Did you always want to play basketball?
No, great question. It's funny. I grew up as a surfy kid. Grew up in a town called Coalcliff, which is right between the northern part of Wollongong, right where the sea cliffs are. You'll see all the car advertisements on TV, and that's between a town called Coalcliff where I grew up and Clifton. But I was a surfy kid, 5 years of age in the surf life-saving movement, going to surf carnivals each weekend and playing cricket, playing rugby league, the sport of New South Wales, and just having a ball, and really didn't get introduced to basketball till I was in 6th class or about 11 years of age by a teacher that loved the sport, and I sort of just went on from there.
Yeah, all right, sweet. So who kind of you started basketball kind of late, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who was your biggest idol when you first got into basketball?
Oh, look, when I first, the Illawarra Hawks were playing, and I didn't really know much about them when I was first started basketball. But a teacher called Bob Smith introduced me to the game, and I was lucky enough. I made the South Coast primary schools team in 6th class, and unfortunately, the best player wasn't there. He had appendicitis, and he had to come back in, and I was clearly the worst player. But I was sort of probably reasonably athletic, and I was the one that got cut. And we actually moved from Coalcliff into Wollongong, into North Wollongong, about 100 metres from the beach. And that's where I went to the Police Boys Club and got introduced to a coach called Ted Weston, who went on to coach the Illawarra Hawks for a couple of years. Unfortunately, passed away a year or so ago. But he was just a fantastic coach. I had a lot of great coaches after him, but he really implemented the basics of the game. I came into the Illawarra under 14 side. I was the worst player, but they were the best team in the state. So I learnt pretty quickly, and it took me a number of years, obviously, to hit my straps. And late puberty, developing, late into the game. So all those sort of things. And once I worked it out, things started to go up.
Yeah. So how about over in the NBA? Did you have a spotlight of an idol that you looked?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot.
Game after?
Well, no, we weren't so much into the NBA. I was a big fan of Larry Bird and Dr. J, Julius Erving at the time. We had to wait up to 3 a.m. in the morning, just to get a glimpse of the NBA back in the late 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
But no, a bloke called Michael Jones, who played with the Illawarra Hawks, won the MVP of the NBL, probably in around maybe in the early 80s, led the league in scoring. I really loved the way he played. Benny Lewis started his career at the Illawarra Hawks, went on to become a bit of a legend in the league. His son played for us at Melbourne United. And, those guys, I was just amazed. But, once I got into basketball, looking at blokes like Andrew Gaze, seeing what he was doing, we didn't have the media exposure and the internet back then, so we had to rely on the media that we got from the newspapers. And, it was a bit of a mythical character, Andrew. You'd hear about him in Melbourne, and you get to see him once a year, come to Wollongong, and, it was this weak, grey, old-looking guy that would just tear everyone apart.
Yeah.
He was unstoppable, and you were trying to work out, how does this guy get 40? It didn't look like he had 40.
Yeah.
And, so he would have been pretty inspirational, and then to eventually get to play with him was, almost like a dream come true.
Yeah, so you played 400 games for the Tigers in the NBL. How does it feel having your number retired by them?
Oh, look, it was surreal, It's funny when you're playing, and, I was no superstar. Obviously, I was a labourer on the court. I give this analogy all the time of a building site, and, everyone wants to be the chief designer and the architect where you can sit back, and then you've got the chippies and the plumbers and the plasterers and all the tradies, and then you've got the labourer. So the labourer really cleans up the shit for everyone else. So you guys can't work, all the rest of the tradies can't work unless the labourer does his job. So in a sense, I saw that as my role in the Tigers. I was that labourer. I always probably second guess myself. Am I really good enough to be in the league? Am I good enough to be in this team? But as I said, every workplace, every sort of means of life needs a team behind it, and there's stars in the team and there's role players. And I was lucky enough that the sport and Lindsay, and the system really accepted me as a role player. And, you didn't have to look at me statistically and say, oh, well, Wazza didn't score and he got a couple of rebounds and, well, what did he do? So a lot of intangibles, and I think that the club, Andrew, Lindsay, the rest of my teammates really appreciated what I did, although it wasn't statistically staring at you.
Yeah.
Over those 400 games, did you ever think about the NBA, like getting over there? Or?
Oh, look, yeah, I thought about the NBA all the time, how far away I was from it. Unfortunately, it was never a reality for me. Like every kid, you have dreams, and then eventually reality sinks in, and you don't get ambition and ability mixed up. So that was one thing. But I was lucky enough to play with the Australian under-21 side back in the 80s. So I got my international mix early. I was probably, as I said, a realist to understand. I probably wasn't going to make the Boomers side any stage of my life. I probably wasn't quite at that level, but saying that, I put all my eggs in the basket to make and play at a world championship with the junior side, which I was able to achieve.
Yeah. We just touched on Lindsay. How much of an influence was he as a player?
Lindsay was a major inspiration. As I said, coming down, he was a bit of a mythical character like Andrew. Coming from Wollongong, you just read about him, and as I said, all I really knew about Lindsay was the rumour that Lindsay had burnt down the basketball stadium because he wanted a new one, and Andrew was only in the Australian team because Lindsay's dad was the coach. Yeah. And when you get here, you just find out how much bullshit that really is, and how deserving, one, Andrew was of his Australian team spot, and two, that Lindsay would never be burning down his home there, and then you find out about the Albert Park fire. But, that was before the times, as I said, of the internet and where the truth could come out. And, every import that came out here was the last bloke cut by the NBA, and you had no way of checking the facts. To play under Lindsay was amazing. He was just a player's coach, a great laid back, wasn't that college, high school sort of bloke where he... said I'm the boss, and it was an autonomous thing where I'm in control and you do what I say. He gave you freedom not only on the court but off the court. So just an outstanding players coach, and had a system which really suited my game and the role I was able to play.
Yeah. So you kind of talked to one of your teammates already that you played with in Gazy. You also had other teammates like Bradkey and Copeland that you played alongside. What was it like playing alongside like the three of them?
Oh, look, it was amazing, and we can't forget David Simmons. Obviously, when we first came in here in 1989, we had the double Ds, Dave Simmons and Dave Colbert. God love Dave Colbert, who unfortunately passed away about 10 years ago. But those two, Dave Colbert and Dave Simmons and Andrew Gaze, were putting up 90 points a night they were averaging. Yeah. So when we played teams, it was a matter of what can the rest of us do to contribute, help these guys get their 90 points. And, we were scoring 120 to 130 most nights. And, a lot of people forget about what the double Ds and how good they were. And then obviously Copeland came in and replaced Dave Colbert. And then Bradkey joined the team in 93 when we first won the championship. So to surround me, I always tell people, how come you played so long? And I said, what I did well was surrounded myself with bloody great champions like those players. And I said, I said, Andrew wasn't going to dive on a loose ball, so I was happy to do that. At the same time, I wasn't about to ding threes on people's faces, but Andrew could do that. Yeah. So we all had our roles, and I think we understood each other. We were unselfish. There was no major egos there. Everyone hung their egos on the door before they entered the change room. So we didn't have an issue. We laughed and joked, and as I said, we had a great team, and the camaraderie around everyone was fantastic. And it was in the days where you could keep a side together for 5 to 10 years. And I think really the professionalism, which was great on all sorts of sports, has really killed that structure of having a team together for so long, with the draft rules and with salary caps and everything. So we were in an era where we were just very, very lucky to have that core group together for 10 or so years and to know each other so intricately.
Great culture.
Yeah. So, like, Tigers, iconic franchise, you won 2 championships while you were there. Do you have any stories that come to mind when you think back on your time with the Tigers?
Oh, there's a few. We had some great ones. Obviously, Perth. We'd go there, and I think in '97 we may have sold out every away game that we played at. But Just running out the court announcers used to make us wait 10 minutes in the hallway. So a couple of times Dave Simmons would say, "Okay, boys, we're not going out. We're back in the change room. We're
Boycotting
not
it."
running out with your call."
Was that Rattler?
Yeah. So no, that wasn't Rattler. We didn't mess with Rattler too much. Occasionally, we'd take the piss out of Rattler because he was great for a laugh.
Yeah.
But one time I think it was in Perth, and they called us out anyway. We ran out this day, but I was number 6, so I was usually the first called out. And in Perth, they'd call player for player, so they called me out. They called the other player out.
Yeah,
obviously the Perth player first. So when I come out, you high five the other player from the other side.
Yeah.
But their mascot was there, and he had his hand up to high five me, and I'm thinking, do I high five this guy? And anyway, so I thought, yeah, I'll high five, I'll do the right thing. And he pulled his hand away, and I thought, okay, you don't realise who's coming out next, and none other than Ray Gordon's coming out next. Now Ray's witnessing this from the pavilion, so when he came out, the mascot for Perth had his hand up, but Ray ran right through him and put him on his ass. So we had some great things. You talk about the time also in Perth when Ray said to Vlahoff, and I think Vlahoff had given Blair Smith a hard time in the game before and threatened to break his legs if he was coming in the keyway. And so next game Ray came up to Vlahoff and said in a nice tone, you're a pretty big bloke. Why don't you have a swing? Have a shot, mate. Have a go. This is before the jump ball. So there was a lot of banter. Ray was a fantastic teammate to have. We had stories on and off the court. Obviously, we probably haven't got enough time for all of them, but winning that '93 championship in Perth was amazing. First it was our first win. Me playing for 6 or 7 years in the league was my first ever win in Perth. None of the Tiger players had ever won in Perth, and that was game 3 after we'd lost game 2 the night before. So that holds a lot of really fond memories. The plane flight home, the Melbourne crowd that greeted us at the airport that was so unexpected.
Just that winning atmosphere when you first won the championship.
And to come back to Melbourne and have 5,000 people at the airport and sort of caught security off guard, caught us off guard. Just the celebrations were wild for a couple of weeks.
Alrighty.
Now, we've got some undercover photos that we've got on this screen here. So obviously one of the photos, if I can go to the next slide. So obviously you went through some unique hairstyles. So that's one. But can you tell us what is going on with this photo here?
Well, look, each off-season, because we played in the winter, and I don't think it changed till about 98, each summer I'd go home and work as a professional lifeguard back in Wollongong. And all my mates were growing their hair long. It was the beach trend. It's how long hair one year and beards the other. And so I decided to grow it. And then when I came back, obviously I had to wear the headband for the first few games, but then I decided to get it cut, and Channel 10 said, don't cut it, come to our studio and we'll do you some hairstyles. So they actually left me with a mohawk that I kept on, and they came to train, and I had my mate we cut had all the spikes, and he left it with a mohawk. And it was ironic because I walked out on court, this is at our North Melbourne training venue, right as Lindsay just happened to walk in. So it wasn't orchestrated. And Lindsay sort of walked in, and looked at me like, get out,
walk in and walk out.
So I sort of went, hold on, fellas, and went back and saw me mate who had the clippers and said, just bring me into the real world. And he finished the job off. So it was a bit more for TV production, but that wasn't staged at all with Lindsay. That was he was just coming in from work from the VJ Wheel with his little bag and his tie and his little sort of jacket, and and away we go. But that was just the tone of Melbourne Tigers, of how relaxed we were. I couldn't imagine people doing that in this day just before training.
Josh to wear this like this, or
Josh
would go.
I don't think he would on the afro or the
mohawk.
The style.
Yeah, but anyway, it was just another fun moment.
What year was that?
That's a good question. I reckon around 90, maybe 97.
Yeah.
90, maybe even the start of 98 season.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So if we go back to the question, so obviously you've played 400 games. Like, who do you think your toughest opponent would have been, do you reckon?
Well, besides the training, Dave Simmons, Mark Bradke, Andrew Copeland, Ray Gordon, all those sort of guys. In another scene, probably a bloke, James Crawford, the Alabama Slammer. It was extremely difficult to play because of his athleticism. A lot of times I would get matched up on blokes similar height to me, maybe an inch or so taller, but were way better athletes than I ever was. So guarding someone like him was, if you got around you, you were gone. Dwayne McLean in his day at Sydney was amazing. Leroy Loggins. Most of the best ones I got to mark and got my ass kicked a few times by some. Had success on other nights, but Glenn Saville, was probably one of the ones I had more success on. But there was some just awesome challenges for me week in, week out that I just loved.
Now, we briefly touched on this, but which one's your favourite championship, the 93 or the 97? The first one? Or?
Yeah, 93. Yeah, 93, it's always the first one, the club history. We weren't really expected. We were expected to get it, but that was the year I think we started out, 1 and 11, and everyone was calling for Lindsay to be sacked, and
And winning away as well.
Yeah, and then we went on a bit of a run.
Would you say 97 was a tougher championship playing against Magic?
Oh, yeah, and again, we had a horrible start to that year. Our import Jarvis Lang, remember Jarvis that used to do that with the head. He hurt his knees, and we were lucky to fall into Marcus Timmins that year. So Marcus came, and I think we won 15, 16 straight, and lost game 2 of the grand final. But yeah, playing the Magic, or the Dragons that they became, and Nuttawading obviously originally, they were amazing contests. So, not only because of the athleticism, the contest between the players, but the crowd and the atmosphere that was in Melbourne, having two teams.
Packing out Rod Laver each night.
Just amazing, but fans going at each other. It was war in the stands and it was war in the court, so there was no love lost anywhere. And, I had mates on both sides, and, we look back and we laugh now, but, that was just some unbelievable contests and, some unbelievable memories.
Yeah.
So you've obviously now coaching basketball. Was the transition always smooth from basketball playing to coaching, or?
Yeah, look, I think in the mid-90s, I think Lindsay sort of said to the team, does anyone want to coach juniors? And I think me and a bloke called Nathan, Big Nate, I can't remember his last name now, but anyway, we both decided, we'd love to do some junior teams. And I remember coaching the under-16 junior teams, and I had a bloke on it in that team called Ben Jolly, who went on. He played only a couple of games for Essendon, but holds the games records, 450 for Williamstown VFL. He was under 16 at the time. And I had 3 of those under 16 boys. I think Dean Limback played a little bit with Richmond, and I think I had Bones McGee, Lockie McGee, ex-Bones McGee, ex-Legion footballer, his grandson, also on that side. So this is probably in the 90s, but I lost 3 of my under 16 Tiger boys to AFL. So AFL took a lot of the good basketballers back in those late 90s.
So really, during playing and...
Yeah. So I was lucky enough. I was still playing. Then at the end of my career, once I finished, I was lucky that Lindsay and Al Westover took me on as a second assistant. And in the club, and I did that for 3 years, obviously, before Lindsay retired, and I became Al Westover's right-hand man for the next 10 years.
So you just mentioned how you were an assistant coach with the Tigers. About a month ago, the NBL lost Corey Williams. You spent some time with Corey in Melbourne. What was that like? Oh,
look, that was great. That was the days where Seamus McPeak owned us. Al Westover was the head coach. I think we were based at North Melbourne, and I think we cut our imports, or the club cut the imports. I think it might have been Devendorf and a little guard. But we brought in Homicide, and he was amazing. Just an inspirational guy. The glass was always half full with him. Never empty. And he came and he created a bit of magic and a buzz around the town. We didn't end up winning the championship, but he just brought just an enthusiasm and
brought life to basketball.
And a belief, and it's about having fun. And to watch the way he operated, it was just an absolute privilege to be involved with him for that short amount of time. But looking back on it, just thinking about what he brought to the team and and the club and the fans was just amazing. And he carried that on, obviously for the next 10 or 15 years.
So 10 years ago, the Tigers rebranded from the Tigers to United.
Yep.
What was your initial thoughts when you heard the news of that?
Oh, look, hijacked. I was working at the grassroots, so I understood it all, and I was coaching junior teams, and I could see the animosity, and the people were hating Melbourne Tigers on a Friday night when the under-16s or the 18s or the under-12s, whoever it was playing against the local club. And then we were asking those same kids and parents to come and support Melbourne Tigers in the NBL. And a lot of them, I could see where the Tigers were going from. They were losing a lot of support through Melbourne, although there was only one other Melbourne team. And, I always talk about being the greatest bit of marketing, and it's just how fickle the human race is. And, that's why we see so many ads. But all Melbourne, all they did was really say, boys, take off those Melbourne Tiger singlets because people won't come and watch you play for Melbourne Tigers. Here's a new singlet. We'll call ourselves Melbourne United. It's the same people running it. It's the same people playing it. And as the fickle public do, we like Melbourne United. That's our... It was the same people, same everything, except we had a different uniform and we were called a different name. Greatest marketing thing ever, but it just shows you how well marketing is if you do it right. Yeah. People will buy things or like things because they're convinced by the marketing. And that's what I say. We were hijacked. They just changed. People's fickleness enabled them to say, wow, this is a different team, when it really wasn't. It was just a different name team. And the rest is history. You know, they got the support. People thought it was a soccer name. It was a matter of rebranding and having that brand there for a number of years. And you talk about Melbourne United now, people go, oh, you're a basketball side in Melbourne. There's no soccer connotation in a way. So eventually your names, if you market them well enough and you do the right things, they will grow. The supporter base is obviously improved because you haven't got I wouldn't say the legacy of the Melbourne Tigers, but you haven't got the people that dislike the Melbourne Tigers at a junior sense, and the parents won't come and support them.
And they've had success as well.
So you're able to get those people that compete against the Tiger juniors. You know, obviously you'll have the Tiger legacy for years. It's and there's the argument to say when Melbourne United win a championship, does that add to the Melbourne Tigers championship? Are we the same club? You know, I really say we were two different clubs. Melbourne United is, say, different to Melbourne Tigers, and it's a bit unlike where Brisbane Lions overtook Fitzroy. You've got all the history. They moved them, so the club Fitzroy moved to Brisbane. I don't say Melbourne Tigers. Although it was just a change of uniform at the time, I think that the history almost should keep separate. So Chris Golding wins the MVP. Do you say, oh, well, he's won 2 MVPs and Andrew Gaze has won 12 for the club? Well, I don't know. That's arguable, and who's responsible for the history? Who does St Kilda Saints? Who does the Nunawading Spectres? Who's responsible for all that other history? Should the NBL be responsible for it? Should Melbourne Tigers be responsible for Melbourne United? That's all the things they've got to work out. But
like you go to a few United games, I've seen you at a few games. Like when you look up and you see like those retired jerseys alongside your name, like Gaze, Gordon, Simmons, Brad Key, Copeland, and then you see your championship banners under the Tigers, like, do you feel like they should be there, or?
Well, you get really mixed emotions. That's what I feel. You feel proud that they're there, and obviously United came from Melbourne Tigers, and that's the argument we have, is that, are they responsible for encompassing the Tigers and everything that goes with it? Where does it stop? Do they take our juniors as well? Do we suddenly, Melbourne United, they're part of Melbourne Tigers. People start in the juniors, we're not going to go support them because they're aligned with Melbourne Tigers. So I could imagine it's a sensitive one, and I think they've handled it pretty well. As I said, in encompassing, the Gaze legacy, that's legendary. Why wouldn't you want that? And that was one of the biggest things about changing to Melbourne United, is that the brand of Melbourne Tigers was probably one of the best brands in basketball known around Australia.
When you think about basketball Melbourne, you think Melbourne Tigers.
So highly risky with the name Gaze, Melbourne Tigers, synonymous there, to actually bury the Melbourne Tigers. That was a high risk. One that's obviously paid dividends and proven to be right in the long term. But maybe the Melbourne Tigers will come back as their own entity one day into the NBL.
Well, they still are in the NBL 1,
yes.
So who knows?
Maybe
5 years' time we'll see another expansion of the Melbourne Tigers back.
Yeah, so Melbourne Tigers still has its own identity, so that's probably where it's really confusing at the higher level. We've got our own identity in the juniors and as the NBL 1. What happens if we come back into the NBL as a new team and we compete against Melbourne United? Because Melbourne United still have our history. So, I don't know the answer to that. I'm just proud and happy that at least someone's exposed to Melbourne Tigers history, and that's Melbourne United that's doing that. But, there's going to be some people, purist Melbourne Tiger people, that don't like that, and there'll be other
Leonard was
other
one of them at the start.
Leonard Copeland was, don't hang my singlet up. I think he's come around now to
well, as I said,
and love it. We all want a little bit of publicity now. We've all got an ego, and it's nice to walk in and see your singlet hanging there. But
Well, will Golding have the Tigers or the United? Because he was at both.
Well, that's
because he's definitely he's get his hand up like.
So it's the same as Barlow, you would say. I mean, Barlow just retired, and he had an amazing career with both the Tigers and United. So
and Sydney.
Yeah.
So what do you do with his singlet? Do you have a half United and half Tigers singlet? So this is where it's they're going to have to make a
It's
decision.
political, but yeah.
How do you handle that? But anyway, it's just great that they've got the history up there.
When did you start working at United?
I
Or were you
continued
coming-
over.
you
Obviously,
continued
I
over
went
from
with the
Tigers to United.
Yeah.
when the name changed. So I'm proud to say I've been with the Tigers, and I'm proud of what the Melbourne United, where they've come from and where they are now. And the people involved have just been awesome.
Yeah.
Coaches, staff, the management, and everyone's just done an awesome job, and the owners, of course.
So we might go on a little bit of a tangent. So obviously your kids, Josh and also Hannah. So obviously you've got 4 kids. Like, did they all want to go into the basketball area, or did they have other plans going
No,
on?
they had no choice.
Yeah, right.
they were just they were fortunate or unfortunate that Dad was a basketball coach, and obviously I ran all the school holiday camps, and school holiday time was really convenient for Mum to say, hey, take the kids.
Yeah.
Do some exercise.
Yeah. And I never forget
Get them
the
out of
first,
the house.
Yeah, and I think I took Josh to a camp the first time. He might have been 4 or 5. And I said to my ex-wife at the time, I said, look, I might call you at midday and just see how he's going, because, he might be a bit tired and sort of want to go home. And anyway, no call, and the camp ended at 4. And at 5 o'clock, I'm still trying to drag him out of the stadium. And I'll never forget that. And I was thinking, how can a kid go 6-7 hours running around at that age? And I thought, he's going to be hungry and thirsty. But right then I knew, he's got the bug. And so they really had no choice. It was a great thing. If I'd been a football coach, they would have been probably good footy players, because they would have been at footy camps. If I'd been a tennis coach, they would have been at tennis clinics. So I think, and I talk about this as coaches, kids in any professional sport or, any sporting lives, that they have that opportunity to go along with mum or dad to their sporting prowess and what they do, and be around unbelievable athletes, professional athletes, people that are like-minded, sporty, athletic, and they're looking at players, and they're very impressionable. They're practicing skills that they see. Josh come home and he'd be seeing someone go through the legs around the back, and he's out the driveway practicing that for the next half an hour until he nails it. So they're picking up things, good habits, bad habits. Hopefully they're forgetting about the bad habits of the players. But, just having that opportunity. So, Hannah, she probably wasn't as into it as the other as Neve and Ella, but Hannah stopped playing from under 12 to under 16 for 3 years, but then picked up the love of it again. But basically, I think my kids, they get an unfair head start on a lot of other kids because of what I did and being a coach.
And so obviously in 2019, like, Josh pretty much made a name for himself. Like, was his goal and ambition always to, like, obviously it was a bit somewhat different to yours, but did he always have ambitions to go over to America?
Oh, absolutely. He had ambitions to go to college, to play NBA. He had that photo, I think, of Steph Curry, LeBron, KD, James Harden, you guys know, and Carmelo Anthony or someone, and he had that hanging up on his bedroom wall since he was 10 or 11. And to think, he's looking at those players, and he's now playing with against most of those guys 10 years later. But he had dreams. He was frustrated. It took him a long time. As I said, late developers. He was like Dad, late puberty. Suddenly shot up sort of 6 inches at that 14, 15, 16-year-old age group. And
As they tend to do.
and I always thought he had the ability. He had the genes, obviously. And, I saw so many similarities in myself, especially height-wise and the way he was maturing, that I knew the growth spurt had come. And, I was lucky enough that we develop little man skills before we become a big man.
Well, that's what you said at camps. That's what I think I've learned from you.
So he was a great ball handler. So we, when it's like anything these days, the game's become a positionalist. So if you're 7 foot, you've got to be able to dribble and shoot, and if you're small, you've got to be able to post up and play D and do all those things. So lucky as a little bloke, he had great skills, ball handling skills, great IQ of the game, and then the body grew to an exceptional height for his position, so that just all fitted in. So we always thought he had a chance to get there. Josh was always keen, but as I said, it was a process, and it just took him a long time to really mature and develop.
So how old was he when he possibly got scouted? Do you reckon? Was it 16?
Yeah, probably 17. He left the home in year 11, so he would have been 16 at the time. Went to the Institute or the Centre of Excellence down in Canberra. They went over to as a junior team, I think. I can't remember, it might have been 19 or 20, and he won the MVP of the junior classic. They beat a Spanish team, and other countries were saying, who the hell is this team? Who's Australia? Where are they from? And that really put us on the map. They had a great team. Armstrong was there, Mojave King, they had a great crew. And as I said, Josh got named MVP, and suddenly his name came up in lights. And we was talking about it yesterday with a friend, and Mojave King was top 10 was a year out from that draft, and Josh wasn't on the top 100. And just amazing how much can change in such little time. And Josh to come into the top 10, and Mojave dropped right out of it, which was just an amazing sort of flip.
Stephen Bradbury style.
yeah, absolutely. And as I said, Josh just kept improving, and we were lucky enough that people saw the talent in him that we were hoping they did.
So 2021 was a big year for the family, obviously, because I was around you at the time. Josh's first pro year in NBL, and then NBA, and then Olympics as well. How did the whole family manage that with COVID as well going around? And
Look, it was massive, Aiden. We were all hoping that he would make the Olympic team, and selfishly, they'd saved Dad having to go over to America and go to the draft. I was working with Melbourne United. I had holiday camps coming up. I had clinics all locked in. And when he didn't make the Olympic team, selfishly, I was like, oh, shit, I haven't got time to go over to this draft. But it turned out to be the greatest silver lining. Josh had obviously had that great year of the NBL, got himself ready. So the family all flew over and stayed in New York, and obviously the draft was in Brooklyn. And, it was great. His agent, Daniel Moldovan, it was probably a masterstroke. They didn't take Josh to the combine. Yep. Josh wasn't going to...
Was the combine still on because of COVID?
Yeah, I think, they did have a draft.
Scaled down.
Scaled down. Yep. But, Josh wasn't going to jump out of the gym, wasn't going to impress anyone with his athleticism. He wasn't going to out-sprint anyone, and he probably wasn't going to outshoot anyone. And what they really wanted to do was put him in front of the GMs and the coaches and show that he was actually 6'7" and 200 pounds, and they were sort of calling him 6'6" and 185 pounds. So
it's better than Bronny, because Bronny was listed at 6'4", now he's 6'1".
Yeah.
But
so they really kept him away, and having him get drafted was just amazing. Going through that whole process, the night, getting flown over to KC the next day,
private jet,
meeting all the crew over there, the owners and everything, and the whole setup was just to see how professional they were in all walks of life, both on and off the court, and and the opportunity Josh was going to get at the time was, he was everyone couldn't have been happier.
Did you think it was going to be pick six? Like, did you,
Nah, look, we didn't know. You're hoping top 10.
Yeah, but
you think and. You've seen it, from afar many years before where everyone's, this guy's going here, and then they end up 20 picks later. But what the NBA basically says is, listen, your kids are going to get drafted. They're going to be NBA players. Don't be disappointed where they go. If they don't go number one where you're thinking and they go 20, he's still in the NBA. So we were just happy to sit back and, wherever he got picked and came out.
As the night went on, like when he got closer, like pick one done, did you kind of like have an idea of like, he could be going close to this team?
Well, it's funny because people outside you probably know more about it. They've got the bloke that tweets a minute before that gets the call. They've all been to the hat fitting, so they've all every team's got to have a size with their stamp on it for Josh in case they draft him, and so that whole process. But you get an idea. There's about 10 cameramen, and they're running around, and about 8 are on one table filming what they think is going to be the next pick. And then they got a 2 on the other guy just in case they're wrong. And they got it right. I think they got it wrong around 4 and 5, and they got it. And I remember watching at 5, and I was thinking, okay, if Oklahoma's going to take him at 6, when they're picking 5, they'll have a couple of cameras at our table, and they sort of had a couple, but they play silly buggers. If we're the cameraman, I'll come up to you, and you'll be all filming Josh, and then I'm going over. No, it's not him. So we saw, so with about a minute and a half, the 5 minute, I think it was on the clock. About a minute and a half, it was just a whoosh. We had about 8 cameras. So you get the feeling they know.
And the agent, Daniel, obviously knows.
So no one sees this. So there's only Daniel, the Octagon agent, Josh's mum, Kim, Hannah, and me. So there was only 6 people there at the table. Our other 2 daughters are in the stand with Olgan. So anyway, they come around saying, no, it's more than likely happening because it's been tweeted out. So the cameras, so no one sees that. But so as soon as they announce Josh's name, there's a camera that they just cut to, so you don't see the other 8 that are all hovering around the table.
I saw an interview where, like, it might have been with Ball Magnets with Tommy Mitchell, talking to Josh and that, and, like, he was talking about, like, in that time that you just mentioned, and that I think, like, someone on the table and that might have told them to, like, put the table in, put the
put the
phones
phone-
in the middle, flip it over, so then you just
Well,
don't know.
they're told to turn their phones off because I think it's Wojcinski. I think he gets the heads up and texts it out who's the next
So the
draft.
team's not obviously at the
Before it happened.
Yeah.
So I think they were trying to just not spoil the moment, but I mean you knew because the camera, unless they got it dramatically wrong.
It's like, oh, we've got the wrong guy.
Like the Oscars just.
And it was funny because the one before that 4 or 5 I talk about they were all here and they had 2 and then they went okay, it wasn't him, it was him. They just left the bloke blind. He's sitting there with all these cameras that just said
kids.
see you mate and then ran to the other guy. But that was a blast. And they interview him. They said, well, listen, when he gets drafted, they'll grab me to come up. They do the national TV interview. It's about a minute. And
Do you wish they said Adelaide NBL or Australia? Because they don't like to credit the NBL when they get drafted.
I would have liked to have said Melbourne Tigers. And had a bit more there. And, or at least, I mean, he does come from Adelaide, and they say the COE, so there's
They
difference
don't
of...
really credit NBL because they don't like to credit.
But the NBL, clearly has got some credit, and with LaMelo and the way
RJ at the time.
the way Homicide, pumped up the next stars in the league. I think he had a fair bit to do with our exposure internationally as well.
How did you find, did you find that Josh was prepared to have that much cameras directed at him, before he went over there?
It was fun at the time. I think he's grown a bit old of it.
Yeah.
With everything that's happened over the 3 years, and he's been pretty used to it. But that was really surreal at the time. Obviously he dealt with it to a minor extent in the NBL. That fanfare and publicity and,
COVID as well,
and exposure. And then with COVID and everything, we got to America. It was we were in lockdown here. You got to America and they were sort of almost
running around like
we're not even going to acknowledge
like
COVID. How do you
a
spell
whole
that?
other world over there, probably.
And you go to New York and LA and they're just like, no, what's this COVID crap? You're kidding me, aren't you? So it took America a long time to acknowledge that it was actually out there. And it's funny because we missed the lunch. We'd had our COVID shots and everything, but we hadn't been long enough from the shots, so we weren't allowed to go to the lunch because of the commissioner, because they didn't want Adam Silver. It was all, we can't get... so that was the night before, and yet Josh comes up the next night and hugs him on stage and everything. So if he had COVID, then he would have had it the night before, so we couldn't believe we weren't allowed to go to this dinner because of the COVID protocols yet.
Well, number 6 might be your lucky number.
Yeah,
Pick
I know.
6, you wore 6, he's wearing 3 and OKC, which makes 6.
Yeah, and it was, we I think he wanted to have number 6, and we got there, and I think the French bloke was still...
Yeah, I think he was still...
and then Josh took number 3, and I think the next day they cut the guy that was actually at number 6. But, the 3 was good.
He's made free his own, because Adelaide as well.
Well, that's it, he can make his own. And as I said, it wasn't all about me and numbers and everything. And, he's quite happy with number 3.
Now, we talk about basketball being growing around Australia. Do you reckon Kesselman has had a huge impact in Australian basketball?
Oh, massive effect on the game. Just from a financial standpoint, and what he's been able to achieve. And a lot of things in any walks of life, it's you can pump your sport up, you can do whatever, but inevitably it's coming down to dollars and the financial support that he's been able to bring. Hopefully being able to regenerate this league. I'm sure he's been able to recoup a few bucks, but a lot of that money's coming out of his pocket.
Well, the Jack Jumpers United as well.
You invested in Melbourne United, and then the league, obviously, and when they owned Dodo, obviously with Larry and Michael Slapoy, who were fantastic sponsors of the Melbourne Tigers before they became Melbourne United, and they actually owned Melbourne Tigers. I think Larry came in late. Michael was always the basketball man, but then Larry was the brains that could come in and run the show. So I think basketball was very lucky when Larry decided, I like this game. Yeah. I'm going to get out of my boat and I'm going to come and run the NBL. And
did you see it dying down as a coach? Could you see that basketball was not what it once was?
Well, it wasn't dying from a grassroots level. The participation in the sport has been amazing. What we can't do, and it's unfortunate, and I tell this story, there's 10, 11 NBL sides, so there's basically 10 spots for Aussies.
Yeah.
Let's say there's 100 spots for our elite basketball. Now, here's a country that's ranked in the top 4 in the world, basketball, junior boys and girls. And we've got 100 spots for professional players to make a living. Now, you're about the 80th player, you're probably making 55 to 60 on a minimum wage. Yeah. And you say, how can you do that? You're an elite sportsman, you're in an elite competition of a country that's ranked. Or maybe you can go play AFL, be in the top 600 of the country. Now, no disrespect to AFL, but no other country plays it. and you can make 300,000 or 400,000. You can make so you can be an elite, nearly Olympian athlete,
Well,
and not even make a smidgen of what a football player. So
Yeah.
the decision for a lot of our basketballers that I'm a sportsman and I want to get paid. So even though I'm a great basketballer, and I might make 100,000 playing basketball, and I'm pretty good in the world, and I'm pretty elite in Australia, but I could just be middle range, average footballer, and make 400,000 or 500,000. Now, don't tell me they're great athletes. Don't get me wrong.
No,
What they do is amazing, and you got to take your hat off to the AFL of what they're doing. So it's a real money issue with the population. I always say, you're dealing against soccer and now netball, cricket, the Matildas. We've got the greatest women's sport in the world, and we've got to pay them. So how much money have we got to go around? We've got the talent, and we always talk about the NBL being maybe in the top 3 or 4 leagues outside of the NBA. But when it comes to pay, we're probably about the 50th best paying. So there's leagues that are way worse than us that are paying way more.
Like Asia, China, Japan.
Yes, absolutely. And, that's just what we're up against. But what we do have is a beautiful country.
Beaches.
English speaking. You're going to get paid. The clubs are pretty financial. Europe, and that can be a bit of a lottery for sportsmen and women that you just don't get paid.
Yeah.
So, but the NBL is in a really good spot, I think, and Larry and Homicide and obviously the future players and administrators that did all the hard yards leading up to the good times.
Yeah. So kind of touching on that, like, where do you see the NBL and basketball in Australia going from here? Because it's at a high now.
Yep.
And obviously with the success of the Jack Jumpers, hate to say that now.
Yes.
But the success of the Jack Jumpers and that, where do you see basketball going from here?
Well, we clearly want more games. It's a really, again, it comes down to finances, and players talk about wanting to play 30, 40, 50 games a year, but can we sustain that? Can we get a crowd every night? Is it financially viable? That's all the questions. As I said, you're competing in a smaller population, and we've got an absolute avalanche of sports out there. There's just so many, and everyone's craving for sponsorship and money and assistance. So I think it's only going to get bigger and better because of the participations in the juniors and the amount of people. But what we're finding is if juniors haven't got the pathway and haven't got the ability, and teams are limited and the number of spots in the NBL are limited, they will go to another sport, as we've seen constantly over the years. We're Olympic sport. Kids are so close to going to Olympics and then turning to another sport because they just can't get paid. So if you're not making it in Europe or America where there's massive money, and I think that's the incentive the kids see now. I can make the NBA and make millions of dollars. Yeah. But if you're in that next level behind it in the NBL, you're still probably earning a good living, but it's nowhere near the millions. And it's probably still nowhere near as good as what the AFL pays.
Yeah, and you also got the women's game.
Yep.
Where do you see that going from here?
The women's sport has just evolved immeasurably, and I talk about with my best mate Todd from back in Wollongong, and we went on a New South Wales and Queensland schoolboys, schoolgirls tour around Canberra, and we watched this girl called Sandy Brondello, who's now the Opals coach and was a legend, and we would have been 16, 17 at the time. We said, quick, we've got to go watch the girls. Watch this girl. Only girl in the world we've ever seen with a jump shot. And Sandy Brondello, this is back in the 84, I think this would have been, and she used to pull up off the dribble, jump and shoot the ball. Girls never did that. No. And we always used to just go, wow, she plays like a bloke. But now you watch the women, and they're athletic, and their skills are amazing. They play like men now. They're agile. It's not just
fast,
hoof-footed, and people sort of club footing it down the court. They're very, very good.
And we got a few Aussies now over in the WNBA. You just coached one of them in Jade Melbourne.
Yep.
Back with the Tigers a couple of years ago, and she's, I think, the other day just put up career high numbers. Yeah. For Washington over there,
it's amazing. I was just, it was an absolute honour to be able to coach someone like Jade for a few games in the NBL one with the Tigers the other year. But it's just, again, it's testament to what Australian basketball's doing. That they're getting our kids and out of the NBL. The women are playing there. Australia. Everyone knows about Australia now. It's it took them a long time to acknowledge us and realise that there was some pretty good players here, but our women for a number of years have been really the leaders of basketball in Australia. They're the first ones to get medals at the Olympics and the World Championships, and comparatively to the men, they have been way ahead of us on the international scene. But the men are now catching up a little bit, and it would be great to go to Olympics one year and come back with 2 gold medals.
Because you've got people like Lauren Jackson, who just seems like she's never retiring. She just wants to come back and enjoy her basketball. Like, how do you think she'll go in the Olympics this year?
What a legend, and what a great story. And so long as they can load manage her and she doesn't burn out, but for someone that good, why couldn't you take her for 10 or 15 minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just looking from the outside. Yeah. And I'm not privy to what's going on, and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but looking from the outside in, what a great story to have her there. Maybe one of the greatest female players of all time, and to have her there and mentoring the young kids, and so long as she earns a spot, which I see no reason why she won't.
And that's what she said to herself. She's like, she doesn't want to get gifted a spot.
And she'll be the first to put up a hand and say, "Oh, look, I'm not up for it." But I really hope that she's up for it, and I think she can have some great contribution to that team. And gold, it would be nice.
And where do you see the Boomers? They just got off the podium in Tokyo.
Yep.
Do you see them getting back up there this year?
Oh, yeah. Everyone's a realistic chance. You go to World Championships and Olympic Games, and there's probably 10 teams out of the 12 at the Olympics that says, what, we reckon we're a chance to win the gold. And it's just a testament, again, to basketball and how well it's doing around the world. And, you look at Spain, ranked number 1 in the last World Championships, ahead of America, didn't make the top 16. It just shows you how quickly, and there'll be teams that aren't going to the Olympics that said, well, I reckon we could have made the finals here if we'd been. So it's all about the qualification. And
like France in the World Cup last.
So
Olympics,
teams mess up, and as I said, Spain had to qualify, and Slovenia and Greece, one of those is going to miss out, and the one that misses out is probably thinking, well, I reckon we could have played off for the gold medal if we'd got there. So the Olympics,
you kind of have you kind of have a look with the Boomers last year in the World Cup, in that couple bad games, and we couldn't be up there.
Yeah, suddenly we're out of the top 8. We win. We flip one of those games. We win. We're in the top 8. We win. Maybe we're playing for the gold medal.
Yeah.
That's how. And it's great now with basketball around the world. You look, and there's at an offhand, maybe there's 10 to 15 countries that all believe we can play the United States in the gold medal and possibly beat them. And some of those teams mightn't be at the Olympics that really believe that they could be in the top 4 on their day. And it's just great for the sport. It just shows you how many great countries we have, how quickly this sport's growing. And now the African countries coming in, if you're going to look at those in 10 or 20 years.
South Sudan for this sport.
And China, once they get their act together, there's just, we're doing amazingly well for 26 million. And, it's...
Do you think, like you touched on Spain being number 1, do you think a fully strength US side would completely destroy Spain?
You would imagine, and it gets back to, and this saying's been around, a champion team will beat a team of champions. The problem USA has is against a lot of other countries, you have that togetherness. So we're able to come together more often as a group. We've got that core group. If you haven't got as much talent, the USA's, each team will be different because there's so much talent. We're giving everyone a go. So it's for me, looking from the outside, is for America to get that cohesion and team togetherness. They've got the brilliance, they've got the best players, but as we know, champion team will beat champion players.
But also the FIBA level, because US is normal NBA rules, are not probably used to that. FIBA game style.
Absolutely, yeah. Different style, different referees, different. You can play zone defence. And most countries now have, 10 to 15 players that can compete with the best 10 to 15 players. If America gave us their 100th to 110th, and we said every other country had to give us your 100th to 100th, well, we'd be getting smashed out of the park. But now all the elite at the top level, we just have enough players, which we're gathering each year. 20 years ago we had 2 or 3 that could compete, and now we've actually got 10 or 12 guys that we can legitimately take and say we've got no worries putting them on the court against the best players in the world.
So we speak on the NBA finals now, so obviously game 3, so we're speaking on the 12th of June, so obviously game 3 is tomorrow and Boston's up 2-0. Do you see Boston clean sweeping it, or do you see them...
I think Boston wins it, whether they clean sweep it or not. Just depends how much grit Dallas have, but they're going back to Dallas for the next 2, so I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas gets 1 at least. They're a great team and they've got some great players, but looking from the outside, I think Boston's just way too good. I think whoever was coming now, I think the West altogether were way superior to the East, but the top team.
You saw Dallas in person.
Well, that's it. Well, Boston probably deserved to be in the West Conference. and just have all the best teams there because
Yeah.
it was basically Boston and the West.
All right, so we'll close it up now. Just last question. Do you have an inspirational or motivational quote for any upcoming or rising athletes out there?
Yeah, look, I've got a couple. I always said, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog.
Yep.
And the other one, our Westover asked me for a quote one time and to come up with some inspirational, and I used it, and I came up and I had a good think, and it probably relates to me. Effort requires no skill.
Yeah.
And, so if you hear that quote, that was the one I wrote down. Chris Anstey loved it. A few people made it, and the people that understand it will realise that you don't need skill to have effort. And, and I basically, that probably epitomises my game and me when I'm playing sport. Sometimes lack of skill, but I'm going to make up for it with the ultimate effort.
Yeah. No, so, Waz, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your day to come on and talk to us and share your stories of both your playing career, coaching career, and so yeah, thank you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, and I'm always outspoken. I've got lots of opinions, but that doesn't mean they're right. But yeah, thanks for having us on, guys. Great to have a chat about the good old days.
Yeah.
All good. So that wraps up another episode of the Winning Edge Sports Podcast. You can listen to this episode on Spotify and YouTube. We'll finally have it up. And you can follow us on Instagram at the Winning Edge Sports Podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.